show.
And now for our interview corner. It has almost been a year since George W. Bush became President of the United States. The economy was already sluggish when President Bush moved into the Oval Office, but the terror attacks on September 11th was a strong, unexpected blow, especially to the airline and distribution industries. Stock prices also plummeted and seem to be stabilizing now. But what is the forecast for the American economy, which has not only affected the Japanese economy, but the world?
Today, continuing from yesterday, we talked to another expert on the Bush administration. Yesterday, we heard about foreign policy issues, and today we hear about economic policies from Ms. Noriko Hama, Mitsubishi Research Institute Research Director. Yoko spoke with Ms. Hama, so let's have a listen.
Ms. Hama, since the September 11 terror attacks in the United States, the U.S. economy has felt a huge economic downturn, mainly because of maybe the drop in consumer spending. But with holiday shopping, it did pick up somewhat. But what is your view of the U.S. economy as of now?
Frankly, I think the U.S. economy has very many problems. I think it is in much worse shape than people like to think at this moment. There is a lot of talk about an early recovery, but I don't think that that's actually going to happen. That I think you could well say that that is an illusion. The U.S. economy already had lots of problems even before the September 11th attacks. The bursting of the IT bubble, if you like, the ending of the new economy. And so it has a lot of excess capacity, production capacity that it has to get rid of. I am rather of the opinion that this could be the beginning of America's lost decade.
Lost decade. I see. And you mentioned many problems, of course, the bursting of the IT bubble, and with which the stock prices plummeted and has bounced back a little bit. Now, will we see stock prices in the U.S. stabilizing for a while, or?
For the moment, they might stabilize somewhat, but as company corporate profit results start to come out, and I'm sure they're going to be very bad, very poor results, that will certainly be negative for the stock market. So one doesn't really see any huge, very rapid drop at this time, but I think weakness will remain. I think the market will remain a very vulnerable one, which could easily go down at the drop of a hat. Yes, so I think that it is going to continue to be a very weak market for some time to come.
Now, until the IT bubble burst, of course, everyone was piling their money into the technology sector. What do you think in the U.S. would be in the next industry to maybe submerge or evolve or to focus on?
Yeah, that's actually a very difficult question. All of the .com types of companies that attracted a lot of capital in the past 5 to 6 years are in trouble. And there are, for the moment, I don't think there is any immediate, any types of companies that can immediately take over from them. So for looking at it from this point of view, as well as others, so I don't really see a renewed upsurge in the stock markets. I think it's going to be a very directionless investment climate, if you like, with nobody really sure where to put their money next. So that I think will add to the vulnerability and indeed the volatility of the stock market and stock prices in general.
Now, it is a new year, and with the new year, President Bush, of course, has proclaimed or stated that it is a year on war. And with this statement, some people are saying that the real reason behind it is maybe to revive the U.S. economy. Now, what do you think about that and his statement?
Okay, that is a very interesting view. It is cynical, but I think there may be some truth in that line of thinking. After all, you have to remember that this is an American president who came in with barely 50% support from the American public. Nobody's really quite sure whether he actually won the presidential election, if you remember that fiasco of the vote recounts and so forth. So half of the American people were not ready to support him to start with. So therefore, he does very much need to attract popular support by appearing to be very nationalistic and very inward-looking, if you like. So he has that bias to start with, and he had and now he's faced with a very difficult economic situation. So the temptation is certainly there for him to appear to be the nationalistic, nation-loving president. And this is, if you like, a heaven-sent opportunity for him to present himself in that light. So yes, well, indeed, in that respect, nothing could be better than for this year to be the year of war for Mr. Bush. So whether he is actually intentionally playing it up or not is questionable, but it certainly is. It ties in very nicely with what he feels he needs to do to maintain popular support.
Ironically, you do say heaven-sent gift, but of course his approval rating is up, I think, in the 90s now, or it's around 90%, yes. Which is unbelievable, especially after a year after he has gone into office. Now, year on war, that's a very hard statement. And some, as you said, some critics are saying that it is to revive the economy. In what way could that do this? If you could explain what they mean.
Well, war is always good for economies. That is a historically proven fact. For one thing, the defense industry will be very happy in this kind of a situation. They will have lots and lots of orders. They will be able to invest. Money will pour into the defense industry, and if the defense industry, which remains a very large part of American industry, does well, then obviously the spillover effect in terms of employment, in terms of other sectors of the economy, will be quite considerable. So it is certainly true that in times of economic difficulty and recessions, policymakers do tend to look towards war to save them from that situation. In fact, indeed, there are many people in Japan who say that war is the only thing that will get Japan out of where it is at this moment. A very foolhardy, foolish statement, obviously, but there are people who say this sort of thing. And yes, it is very much something that policymakers and politicians tend to look toward in times of economic difficulty, and America certainly is no exception. The American defense industry is indeed a very, very prominent part of the economy. The Bush administration itself, it has very close ties to industry in general, and certainly the defense sector. So it all, in that respect, it all ties in rather nicely.
So do you think this is leading to more of his, as you mentioned, his nationalistic appeal or unilateralism of the United States?
Oh, yes, indeed. I mean, I think the Bush administration was already a very unilateralistic administration to start with. It made its position very clear. You have only to see the way they rejected the Kyoto Protocol on environmental issues, global warming, and its national missile defense program certainly speaks volumes about the extent to which this is a very inward-looking, very unilateralist government. And given what is happening to the economy and given the September 11th attacks, this tendency can only be enhanced. And so it is really, in a sense, it's very unfortunate that this type of government is in office in America at this moment, when the global situation is so unstable and we have the terrorists still walking about. So yes, I think one does have to say that you could even say that this is back to Monroeism in America, of isolationism. I think there is always that underlying tendency in this administration that one has to be very careful and very watchful about, I think.
So I know this is a very broad question and an answer that is wanted by all, but what do you personally think is needed to stabilize the global economy again?
Well, I think at this point in time, it is overwhelmingly important for the Japanese economy to sort itself out. This is, after all, it is the second largest economy in the world, but more significantly, it is the largest net creditor nation in the world, which essentially means that Japan is the richest economy in the world. And it is Japan money which makes the global economy go round, if you like. And most significantly, it has been Japan money that was supporting America's new economy miracle, if you like. So you could say that America was the dancing man dancing upon a mountain of debts, of which a very large part has been provided by Japan, the shrinking man, because its economy has not been growing at all. So it is, I think, essential for the Japanese economy to get back on its feet again if the global situation is to stabilize, especially now that America has its difficulties. It is indeed, I think, Japan's turn to prop up the global economy, but for that to be possible, Japan has to get rid of its structural problems, and that's going to take a long time. So we are in a very difficult situation all around.
But up until now, of course, it's been said that if the U.S. sneezes, Japan catches a cold or something along the lines of that. So the Bush administration, how do you think this will affect the Japanese economy to try to stabilize or pull up?
The Americans are certainly getting very impatient with the Japanese because the reforms are very slow in coming. And so they will, I think, push, certainly they will push for reforms, which is not a bad thing. But another worrying aspect of the current U.S.-Japan relationship is that because the American administration is such a unilateralist one, trade issues could yet again become a focus between Japan and America. Already there has been some dispute over the issue of steel products. It could well be that we may see a lot of complaints coming out of American industry, especially now that the domestic economy is in bad shape, pushing the Bush administration to be tough on Japan over trade. That is the one worrying aspect. And of course, the other thing is the Americans are now saying that it's okay for the yen to depreciate a bit if it helps the Japanese economy. But if the yen really starts to depreciate very quickly and by very large amounts, that could put American industry in difficulties, as a result of which something along the lines of a currency war could develop between America and Japan. So this vulnerable America, which needs to look strong and needs to look tough vis-a-vis the rest of the world, is a very worrying presence for Japan at this time.
And if we look to the other parts of the world, what about the crisis in Argentina now? What sort of impact is that having?
It is not having a direct impact on America as of the moment, but if the crisis deepens in Argentina, that could be a very large negative factor for America. That could hit the dollar. If the Americans are seen to be very much dragged into bailing out Argentina, if you like, that is not good in terms of the flow of funds into America. So if the crisis deepens, if America is seen to be having to help Argentina to a very great extent, that would bode clearly ill for the dollar and ill for eventually the American economy, because a lot of American banks have lent money to the Argentinians, of course, and if they are unable to get their house in order, that will bounce back on American finance.
Are there any other factors that may have an impact, such as any other countries, such as maybe China that has just entered the WTO?
Absolutely. I think China will loom very large for America and indeed for the rest of the world, especially now that it is in the WTO, and now especially that America is very much beginning to be prone to be sensitive about trade. One could envisage the Americans and the Chinese becoming embroiled in very serious trade disputes. And I think whatever happens in China, if China continues to be as resilient as it is now, that could become a threat to America and indeed for Japan. If something really bad happens in China, and if for instance China starts to disintegrate from within, that would be a very negative factor for the global economy as well. So whichever way China goes, that is going to be a very significant influence on how America conducts its business.
And last of all, Ms. Hama, we mentioned about the possible problems or trade issues that could develop between the U.S. and Japan. Do you feel that the Koizumi administration and cabinet is strong enough to face the Bush administration and what they demand, and where Japan's focus should be?
I think one of the problems with the Koizumi government is that Mr. Koizumi seems to be totally in love with the Americans. I think that is not a very wise attitude for Koizumi to take at this moment. Of course, the close ties with America is an important thing, but I think what Koizumi does need to do is to focus much more on Asia and think about integrating Japan into the fabric of mainland Asia, if you like to use that word, because I think that is where the economic opportunities lie, and I think it will be a great plus for Japan to become much more politically strongly attached and friendly with the rest of Asia. So I think really Japan needs to be increasingly looking at Asia as a new partner for itself in the 21st century. I'm not saying that we should quarrel with the Americans, but I think the focus really does need very much to be brought closer to home, if you like.
I see. Thank you very much for your time.